Use headphones for a better experience.
They say you should always get to know your neighbors. But what if doing so reveals something you're better off not knowing? That's what happened to me when I moved into a quiet apartment building and stumbled upon the dark secret of apartment 403. Over the next month, I uncovered something so horrifying it changed my life forever. And it could happen to anyone. I had just moved into a new city for work, ready to start fresh. The apartment was affordable, clean, and in a decent neighborhood, a rare find. The landlord was eager to rent it out, but there was one odd thing. He warned me not to bother the tenant in apartment 403. She keeps to herself, he said with a forced smile. Best to let her be. It sounded harmless enough. But from the moment I moved in, I noticed things that didn't sit right. Late at night, I'd hear faint noises coming from apartment 403, scraping sounds, muffled voices, and occasional thuds. I chalked it up to the quirks of old buildings, but the more I listened, the stranger it seemed. The woman in 403, an elderly lady named Mrs. Palmer, rarely left her apartment. When she did, she wore oversized sunglasses and a scarf that covered most of her face, even on warm days. The other tenants were tight-lipped about her. When I asked the man in 301 about her, he shrugged uncomfortably. She's been here forever. Just don't ask too many questions. One night, the noises from 403 grew louder, like furniture being dragged across the floor. Curious and a bit annoyed, I went upstairs to check. I knocked lightly on the door. "Mrs. Palmer?" I called out. "Everything okay in there?" There was a long silence before a raspy voice responded. "Go away." The tone sent chills down my spine. Something about it felt off, like it didn't belong to an elderly woman. A week later, the landlord informed me that the building's water pipes were being inspected and access to all apartments was required. When he got to 403, Mrs. Palmer didn't answer. After several tries, he used his master key and went inside. Minutes later, he stumbled out, pale and visibly shaken. He refused to tell me what he'd seen. "It's nothing," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. "Just forget about it." But I couldn't forget. I decided to investigate. Late at night, I noticed packages being delivered to 403, large, heavy boxes that seemed too bulky for a woman living alone. They arrived every few days, yet I never saw her bring them inside. One evening, I followed the delivery truck to the building and saw a man in a black coat hand the package to a shadowy figure at the door. Their exchange was brief, but the man glanced over his shoulder as if checking for witnesses. The mystery consumed me. I started researching the building's history and discovered that Mrs. Palmer wasn't the first tenant of 403. Over the past 20 years, the apartment had seen a string of short-term tenants, all of whom left abruptly under unclear circumstances. I even found a few online reviews of the building with cryptic warnings like, "Stay away from 403. You'll regret it." Ignoring the landlord's warning, I decided to take matters into my own hands. One stormy night, I heard the dragging noises again, louder than ever. My curiosity outweighed my fear, and I crept upstairs to investigate. Armed with a flashlight and a sense of determination, I crouched near the door of 403 and listened. This time, I heard faint whispers, not just one voice, but several, as if a group was inside. My heart pounded as I leaned closer. Suddenly, the door creaked open, revealing a sliver of darkness. Against my better judgment, I stepped inside. The air was cold and heavy, and the faint smell of decay lingered. The living room was sparse, with mismatched furniture and walls covered in strange symbols drawn in chalk. In the center of the room was an old wooden chair with restraints attached. The whispers grew louder, seemingly coming from the shadows. As I turned to leave, I saw her, Mrs. Palmer, or at least something that looked like her. She stood in the doorway, her face twisted into an unnatural grin. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice layered with an eerie echo. I bolted for the door, but it slammed shut. The symbols on the walls began to glow faintly, and the whispers turned into a cacophony of screams. Desperate, I shoved the chair into the window, breaking the glass, and climbed out onto the fire escape. I didn't stop running until I was several blocks away, shaking and gasping for air. The next day, the landlord acted as if nothing had happened. When I confronted him, he refused to discuss 403 and threatened to evict me if I caused trouble. I moved out within a week. Months later, I learned that the building had been condemned due to structural issues. Apartment 403, however, remained intact. The scariest part of this story isn't the supernatural element. It's the way people choose to ignore warning signs, to dismiss what doesn't directly affect them. In a society where we're more disconnected than ever, it's easy to overlook the suffering or dangers around us. This experience taught me the importance of vigilance, trust in intuition, and the need to question the things we're told to ignore. Because sometimes, the biggest dangers hide in plain sight, right next door.
Don't miss out on the scares. Go subscribe to the channel for terrifying stories, legend breakdowns, and more. Bell turn on notifications and experience horror like never before.